much. So welcome this morning to learning about the housing goal for the person-centered plan. And this is something you can get put in the chat. I always like to have an idea of how many people here are responsible for writing a housing goal or writing the PCP. And you can put that in the chat, and Alex, you can kind of just let me know, please. Okay, we got a few people. I see the chat box. I see the chat numbers going up there for a few people. Okay, well, this is good. So even if you're not writing the goal, you're probably participating and helping follow through with the goal. So with the housing goal, it's very, very important for people to have a housing goal on their PCP, especially Alex and I work primarily with TCL folks, transitions to community living, and they must have a housing goal because that's the whole purpose. And a lot of times I also monitor the bridge housing programs that Alliance has. And one of the first things I ask people when they want to do a bridge housing application, the first thing I do is ask them, is there a housing goal on the PCP? That's the first thing I ask. And I need to, first of all, I have to apologize, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Natalie Huckins, Diversion Housing Specialist with Alliance Health. And that diversion means, it's just what it means. I try to help divert people from losing housing by intervening with DHHS will let me know if there's an issue going on, or a private landlord might let Alex know if there's an issue going on. And we try to stop or somehow intervene by contacting the provider to make sure that we preserve that housing. I also monitor the separations and how many people have separated from housing, which we don't like to see that. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but we do our best to preserve the housing. So that's what I do. So if you don't write the housing goal, like I said, you probably help, facilitate work on it. So we're going to just talk a little about, this is going to be very general because these trainings are not intended to be in depth, but I will give you some information if you want to know more in-depth things about the housing goal. So we're going to get started. So how do we develop a housing goal? And why write a housing goal? The housing goals are written with the permission and input from the member because they've expressed a desire to live independently in the community. And that is what Transitions to Community Living Initiative is all about. And I am not saying that this training is just for TCL folks, but right now with the state, that is the targeted populations, TCL people. However, this training goes for anyone, even if they're not TCL, and if they have a housing goal or they want a housing goal. And I say if they want a housing goal, I do believe that you need to have that buy-in from the member. Without that buy-in, if this is something that is kind of forced upon them, it doesn't often work out. So, and we're gonna talk a little bit about how to get that buy-in as well. So when do you write a goal? When would you write a housing goal on the PCP? Does anyone know? Okay, so I would say the goal should be written once the member expresses interest in independent living. They might tell you, I'm sick of living in this group home. I'm sick of living with my mom, or my mom kicked me out. I'm about to be homeless. Okay, if they're about to be homeless or they've expressed an interest in independent living, you're going to want to put a housing goal on their PCP. And that goal is going to change throughout the stages of tenancy. And we have 3 stages of tenancy. We have the pre-tenancy, the move-in, and then ongoing tenancy. So you will need to change that or amend that PCP housing goal as the member moves through each stage of tenancy. So how do you write the housing goal? Well, that's what we're here to find out. And I am going to, you know what, you guys, I'm really going to ask for input from you all, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I also facilitate the CST PSH training, and we talk about housing goals throughout the entire training. However, I don't write PCPs. I don't do what you all do. You all do this every day. I don't do it every day. So when I'm getting to the portions, or if I'm saying something or missing something that maybe may not be right, or missing something, please raise your hand and correct me and add to the conversation and to the training so that we all can know. So what's involved? Who should write the housing goal? Now, you all, this is where I need you. Okay, typically this is what I've seen. It's written by the housing specialist or case manager, QP. Am I correct? You can raise your hand or speak out. I need to hear a voice because I can't see you guys.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, so is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that's who's usually, pardon me?
Oh, I'm sorry, I said that is correct.
Okay, so it's usually the case manager, QP, housing specialist. Now we have I don't want to say brand new, but relatively new title. We have housing navigators. I guess I don't know if they would write the goal, but they get input from others who are directly involved with the care of the member. This person who might be also involved with the care of a member who would have something to say about the housing goal on the PCP. Who else would be involved?
Maybe an ACT team.
The ACT team, members of the ACT team, very good. Who else? Think about who's in the life of the member.
The guardian.
Oh, very good. That's what I'm looking for. Right. They may have a guardian. And sometimes it's a guardian of a person, or the guardian of the estate, or a general guardian. And literally they almost sign everything depending on their status as a guardian. They may be the ones who have to sign alongside with the member. And on some legal documents, they have to sign for the member. So it's very important to have their input, correct? Who else would you need input from who might be attached to the member?
Primary care physician.
Exactly. That the primary care physician would want to know, would almost need to be involved. Because I will tell you all, you will see fluctuations in their ability to cope, and that might warrant a change in meds. So you want to keep that doctor informed. And then another person we have is they might have a payee. Do you think the payee should be involved?
Yes, definitely.
Definitely.
And the therapist,
Definitely.
maybe, and the therapist too, if we can get that person involved as well.
Exactly. So you want to look at who are the players, who are the stakeholders, who are the players. And you can get this information from the member, or it might be information that you already have, okay? But it's very important to involve all the key players. And then you want to know, this is just the logistics part of the PCP. You all know you always have to put your objectives, the time frame, who's responsible, the frequency. And I will add this. Please be very, very careful with the number of objectives you put down. Because remember, there's 3 stages to tenancy. You don't have to put all the objectives for every stage, because you're going to amend it as the person goes through each stage of the tenancy. So you might only have 2 or 3 objectives for pre-tenancy, but you might have a lot of items under that. No more than what is necessary, because it will be very overwhelming, not only for you and anyone else helping the member, but especially it will be overwhelming for the member, even if it's something they really, really want. And then there are times where you have to actually like pull back the reins and hold them back, because they'll be putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. But yeah, so these are all the things that will need to be, like any other goal you write, the housing goal must include all of these elements. Any questions yet? Okay, good. So what are you going to consider when you're writing the goal? You're going to consider what's important to the member. Okay, what kind of things might be important to them? To the person who is looking for housing, what would be important to you? Think about it like that. What would be important to you if you were looking for housing?
Some type of budget.
Yeah, what can I afford? Exactly. Very good. What else?
Location.
Oh gosh, location, location, location. It's all about location, isn't it? Very good.
What about
Maybe
accessibility?
amenities.
The amenities. Oh, I like that one. Exactly. Amenities. What is there for them to do? Because we want them to stay busy, right? What happens when our members aren't busy? What happens when they have idle time? Someone's saying something, but they're muted, so I can't. Charlotte, are you trying to talk to me?
I apologize. They get in trouble. They find themselves and they get in trouble. So
Yes, ma'am. My mom used to say, idle mind is a devil's workshop.
yeah.
That's an old saying for you young folks online there. Idle mind is the devil's workshop. So they'll find things to do. So you want to see what's important to them, because if it's not important to them, it's not going to work. It's going to fall apart. Okay. You want to assess their challenges or barriers and strengths. What are some of the challenges our members might have? What are some of them?
They may have handicap, some kind of handicap barriers. So accessibility is very important.
Very important. Thank you. That is key because, and you know what? If you don't, first of all, let me go back. Another reason why the primary care physician needs to be involved. Number one, whoever had said that earlier. And also with housing, sometimes if you don't ask, guess what? They won't tell. We have seen it, and Alex, I know, can attest to this because we have more people in private units than targeted units. And we'll have people, they'll get approved, the place will be inspected, and then the member will say, well, I can't climb stairs. Well, they never told us this before. Staff never asked, the member never said anything. So you want to make sure that you look at all their challenges. You all have to ask the right questions. I always tell people that. You got to learn to ask the right questions, because part of writing any goal, it's like pulling teeth sometime, and you got to use all your motivational interviewing skills. How do you extract pertinent information from a person? Okay, so use those skills. That's when you hone in on all that stuff you guys have learned, all that required training the state is making us do. That's when you practice all that. So medical, what other kind of challenges would they have?
Criminal background.
Oh, absolutely. Criminal history. You want to look at that. Now, things are getting a little bit better for people with criminal history. However, a lot of times, if they've done anything within 7 years, it's iffy. It's not impossible, but it's iffy. If they have pending charges, almost no landlord will take them with pending charges. I know with targeted units, they will not take them with pending charges. So you have to make sure that you look into that. And I don't mean to sound ugly at all, y'all, but sometimes you'll ask a member, do you have anything we need to be concerned about in your criminal background? And they'll say, no. Then you'll go on the DOJ public site, put their name in, click, 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 and you'll see things. It might be from long ago, so maybe they truly have forgotten. I know for me, there are some things I don't want to remember, but they may have truly forgotten, or they may be embarrassed, but you still want to check it out for yourself. Use your resources, because you do not want to go through all this, the entire process, and then find out there's this criminal history. What other challenges may they have? Just give me one more.
Don't forget the transportation. To have
Transportation.
access to transportation.
That's a very, very good one. Very good one. They might have a car. If they have a car, I mean, if they don't have a car, I'm sorry, they can't, most likely they would need bus transportation. I've heard some people say, well, I've got friends or my family, and I don't know about you all. I love my family to death. I do, and they love me. But there are certain things, as much as you want to believe that they'll always be there, sometimes they just can't. And if your schedules don't mesh, then you still have to have an alternate form of transportation, a way to get around. So how about the strengths? What could be some of their strengths that you want to assess and look at and that could help you in writing this housing goal?
Like,
Someone said, go ahead.
like income or employability is a good one, I
Yes.
guess.
Very good. Money. This might be a person who has a good work history. Even if they've not worked full-time, they've consistently worked part-time or had some kind of income, whether it was under the table or not, they were resourceful enough to know how to make money. So income is one. Someone said transportation just a little while ago is a challenge. It could also be a strength. We do have members who have vehicles. And if they have a vehicle, that means they can go almost anywhere, right?
Yeah.
What would be another strength?
Mental health, or making sure they go to their doctor's appointments, or
Right. Exactly. It's very helpful. It's very helpful when you have someone who knows that they can get around and who, in addition, they're compliant. If you have someone who's compliant, because I know you both, I know you all have struggled with people who are both. Some are non-compliant, some are, they'll be there waiting for you at the doctor's office or wherever you're supposed to meet them. So a strength is people who are compliant. You guys are on the ball. I love it when people are awake when I'm training. Thank you. What you want to assess, what does this person need to live independently? I will give one example, then I want to know if anyone else has another one. They may need to be close to a bus stop. What else might they need to live independently?
Like a warm handoff as far as like connected to all the resources that they're gonna need in order for them to live independently, and you to kind of step back a little bit and allow them to do so.
Absolutely. I always tell people, you got to pass that baton. I used to be in relay races, the 440 relay when I was in high school. You got to pass that baton. So that warm handoff is excellent. That is what they need. What else might they need to live independently?
Some type of childcare. If they have
Oh my
children.
gosh. Yes. Yes, we do have members that have children, and that could be a huge issue. If they don't have a place where they can, or if they're not close enough to childcare centers or childcare services, or even a family member, relative, or friend who has consistently been there to watch over their children, then they're going to be in trouble. You don't want to move that person away from a resource that they already have. You don't want to do that. So that's excellent. Some people might need to live close to food pantries, right? Shopping centers. And then you might want to have them live close to parks or places where they can have things to do, or community centers. So you always want to know, what do they need to live independently? And I try to get people to think about, what do you need as a person? What would you need to live independently? And then you want to look at, who do they want to be involved? Now, this is up to them. Again, we talked about a guardian. Depending on the level of guardianship, the guardian has to be involved. And most of the time, I've not seen it where there's a huge problem with the member if the guardian is involved. But there are certain people, they may not want to be involved. We have had some where the parents want to take over and the members don't want that. They do not want it. And then I've got one right now where the parent is influencing the member a lot, which is kind of counterproductive for what the team is trying to do to assist. So you will have those types of issues as well. So you want to balance things out and respect the member and who they want to be involved, as well as who they don't want to be involved. So what do you want to consider before writing the goal? You want to make sure that they understand what permanent supportive housing and housing first means. Can anyone tell me what permanent supportive housing means? We always hear PSH, PSH. Can someone define that for me? I'm going to ask about housing first too, so be ready. permanent supportive housing. It's someplace where someone lives that is theirs. They have a key to the place. They can stay there for as long as they want, as long as they follow the rules and regulations of the lease. They abide by the lease. And it's affordable. We now say deeply affordable. When we say deeply affordable, we're talking about most of the time their rent is attached to a subsidy, such as a TCL voucher, TCLV, or Section 8 or targeted unit. Okay, so that's what permanent supportive housing is. And they have a team or services around them. So what about Housing First? Can someone tell me what Housing First is? Because that is the whole concept. That is what we use in North Carolina when we talk about housing people. Housing First, we look at Housing First. Go ahead.
Housing first, not housing only. So everyone deserves to have a home and a place to live. So regardless of whether they're compliant with mental health or substance use or anything of that nature, everyone deserves to have a home. So housing first, we house them and then address, or at the same time, address those other issues and make sure they have the resources available for them if they choose to engage in them.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Ms. White. Absolutely perfect. That's just what it is. Okay. So you want to make sure the member understands that. I've even had, like, even with our bridge housing, I've had providers come up to me or call me or email me and say, you know, Natalie, I know they can't have bridge housing unless they're TCL. I said, no, that's not true. That's not true. But that's what they thought. So I want to make sure that all the providers know that, yes, we have these bridge housing programs, but they're not just for TCL folks. If you've got a member you're working with who's not TCL and wants permanent housing and is on the road to finding their own place, absolutely, bridge housing may help them, okay? So you can still apply for one of our temporary hotel rooms or what have you for bridge housing, even if they're not TCL.
Okay. Okay. Right after this, I'm leaving to go see.
Someone needs to mute because we hear you there. Thank you. So you want to review tenant rights and responsibilities. Too many members go into housing thinking, oh, wow, I got my own place. And then, you know, oh, I could do whatever I want. And yes, they can to a certain degree. I own my own home. I still can't do whatever I want all the time. I mean, there's a HOA here, okay? A lot of us live in apartments where we have restrictions. We live in our own homes on our own property, but there are still restrictions. Even people who live out in the country, there are still restrictions. True enough, the farther out you go, most of the time, the fewer restrictions there are. However, each member has to understand what tenant rights and responsibilities are, which means you all have to educate yourself as well. If you don't already know, then you have to look into that, okay? And teach them so they'll know what they're getting into. Yes, it's a wonderful thing, but they still need to know there are rules. You want to review what's in the lease. This is a biggie. I've asked several providers during trainings that I do, how many of you have sat down, looked at a lease and highlighted what's in that lease with the member? And very few have. I know it's complicated and you can break it down, but this is all part of what the goal, this is the pre-tenancy goal. All of this is part of the pre-tenancy goal. They need to understand the lease and what's going to be required of them. We even have a training, I do believe it's recorded, and it was one that I did, what's in your lease. It kind of breaks down the lease and some of the primary components in almost every lease and things that you want to consider. So you want to look at that. Explain the budgets and utilities. We are talking about finding housing for some people who have never paid a single utility bill in their life. Most apartments, most property managers will require utilities have to be on. It is a direct violation of the lease if you do not keep on those utilities. So they have to stay on. That's how important it is. Some people might think, well, I'm not going to pay it. I don't care if I don't have electric, I'm fine. And that's great for them, but it's a violation of the lease. So you want to make sure that they understand the difference. You want to review the needs of the tenants, like we just talked about in the previous slide. Transportation, food, what other resources are they going to need? So you want to consider all of these things before writing the goal. Any questions or comments? All right, well, keep it moving. So here are other things you want to consider. You want to know how to monitor the progress. And this is throughout every stage of tenancy. You want to know, how are you going to monitor their progress and the needs, of the member? So you can do it through phone calls, video chats, home visits, documentation, because that's a way to monitor their progress. You always want to write everything down. I know y'all have to write all those notes and everything. So you have to write all your lovely billable notes. Okay, make sure you get everything in there, everything you're doing. That's what you want to write down. I tell you, I became the most creative person when I used to do my billable notes all the time. But it's amazing. You're actually probably doing far more than you can write down. Okay, it's just knowing how to document that. And I know you guys get a whole training on all that. That's not my area right now, but I know you guys can do that because you do it very well. I tell people drive by. When I used to be on the street out there, working out in the field, working with clients, I would go see one and I said, I'm in that area. I just moved so-and-so in right around the corner last month. Let me drive by here and see how she's doing. Yes, I would. And then I'd take note if she's got like 8 people sitting on the porch, or if she's not there every time I go by, not there. But drive-bys are very, very informative. They can give you a lot of information. So you can do, that's another way. And then you got to kind of balance it out. How much input is too much or not enough? How do you think you realize when it's not enough? What kind of signs would you see if you're not doing enough, or maybe you could be doing more with the member? What kind of signs would you see from the member, do you think?
If they're not answering any phone calls or any communication from them, that's very important. If you don't hear from them and you're calling, or you're going by and you're knocking on the door and you notice that they're not available, and you wonder what's going on. You get
Absolutely.
concerned.
Absolutely. And I would encourage you all to please, if you don't hear from them, you may want to do a wellness check, or if you check with the guardian, or has anyone else seen this person? If you check with the property manager, have you seen them? You might want to do a wellness check, because we never know what's going on. Like I said, this can be very stressful for a person who's never lived alone. So thank you. That was very good. So here's what you want to know. Someone just told us about Housing First, and they actually described it perfectly. And this is also going to help describe what Housing First is not. I will tell you all, Housing First is not fixing every problem for the tenant. We get some very creative and interesting requests from providers wanting to know how to help a tenant, someone who's already in housing, because they may want certain things. Okay, I can tell you all personally, I'm not going to help a tenant get 5 dogs in their home. I'm not going to do that. Mostly because no property manager would allow that. None that I know of. If one person said, well, he trains dogs. Well, then that would be a business, which means you can't have a business at your place of residence, which means the state is not going to pay dollars for you to have a business at your place of residence. Okay, I can't fix every problem. That's the first thing you all need to realize. There are natural consequences, which is why we do our best to prep all the people we're working with. We try to prep them about independent living. What are your rights? What are your responsibilities? Okay, but you're not going to be able to fix every problem. It's not sober living. We don't tell people, just like Ms. White said, we can't tell people, well, yeah, I'll help you find housing, but you got to stop drinking, or you got to stop doing the drugs. You got to stop. No, they don't. No, they don't. Because studies have shown, housing first is an evidence-based practice. It means it's scientifically been proven. If you put a person in housing where they're not homeless and and shelters and everything, they typically will thrive and do better on other aspects of their lives, okay? That's what it's about. So no, let's get them housed first, and then let's work on some of these other things. It's not mandatory programs or services. Another thing about housing first, they don't have to have support services. And that's gonna be a tough thing for you, because once you get someone in housing, one of the first things they think is that they don't need you anymore. And I really admire the providers for hanging in there, even when they're being pushed away all the time, but they still hang in there and they still keep trying. And I would encourage you to continue to do that. It's not compliance with mental health providers or treatment. They don't have to, have their meds all the time. They don't have to allow a nurse in their unit. They don't have to go to therapy. We encourage it, and I will tell you, Housing First works far better with all of these things, but we can't force it upon them. It can't be conditional. Housing cannot be conditional. Housing First is not like that. It's not conditional. All members who desire housing are considered housing ready. If they want housing, they are housing ready. You need to start working on a housing goal. Any questions or comments about any of this? Okay, we're moving right along. You guys are great. So I kind of just wrote out real quick. I hope you all could see this. I tried to make it as big as I could. Can you all see that okay? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So the characteristics you all recognize this, right? It's just part of like what your PCP would look like. So in red up there for the characteristics, I wrote that John states he would like to leave the group home and have his own place. Right there. Okay, it's time to do that. You got to do that housing goal, because he had expressed to you he wants his own place. All right, so what is the short range goal? And who's going to be responsible? Service and frequency, and then how are you going to do it? So on this slide, I put, okay, what are you going to, what are you going to do? John, who's going to do it? We're going to look around town and on housing resources and find an area where I would like to live. That is what John is saying he will do. He's going to get the housing resources from the people responsible. John, he's responsible for making sure this goal works. The peer, most of the time on housing goals, there is a peer support specialist on that team. And they're the ones who work side by side a lot of times with the member, helping them find housing. And then there's a housing specialist, and when available, the guardian, just whoever. I only put a few people, but we named a lot earlier. So whoever's involved, that's who's responsible for helping to make this work, okay? Making this goal follow through. How often? I guess it depends on the number of hours that you all are authorized for. I just put 2 to 4 hours a week. I don't know. It would depend on your authorization and what is permitted. So you have to make sure you know that ahead of time, how many hours you can work with this person. And then, of course, how are you going to do it? Look at websites. The peer can accompany John on housing searches, helping him determine his needs and the safety of the area. Keep a list. A lot of people don't keep a list. What have we already looked at? What have we looked into? What are potential possibilities? What places are absolutely not going to work? Work on securing the documents. The housing specialist or the QP, they usually do this part. They work on securing the documents. And I know I didn't put this in the form that's on the regular PCP, but please know your role. Okay, so the peer is not the one who's supposed to be getting the documents and working on this ID. They're usually the ones on the streets, on this right there next to the member, doing all that, like the you know, I don't want to say grit work, but they're doing what they do best. And that is side by side with the member, showing them, you know, do you sure you want to live here? Or why don't you think about this? Or I'm glad you like this place. That sounds like a good place for you. But as far as the documentation, the ID, social security card, birth certificates, know your role, housing specialists, QPs, that's what you all are doing. That's what you're gathering all this during pre-tenancy so that the member can have everything they need. So when they're ready to fill out that application, you don't have to wait 2 months from the Social Security office to get a card. Some places will accept copies, other places will not. When we put people in hotels, a lot of times they don't have, and hotels are a form of bridge housing, they need IDs. And the hotels don't accept a copy because they have to actually scan the card in their system, the ID card. So the North Carolina current, not expired, current one has to be in there because they have to make sure the person they're registering is the person who's standing in front of them. Speaking of that, did you all know that there are some hotels in the area that will not register anyone who is local? If you live within like a 50-mile radius of the hotel or a 90-mile radius, you know, you can't, they won't accept you. I didn't even know hotels can do that, but they can. So that's another thing you want to make sure of. But they don't take local people. So not all of them, but some of them, and more are starting to do that. So make sure that you know your roles. And then, of course, at the bottom I wrote, don't forget, you know, the targeted date, the date the goal was reviewed or amended, and you have those status codes. You want to make sure you use that in progress toward goals. Anyone have anything to add to this? Okay, great. So here are the things you want to remember. Housing is a choice. Housing first is a right, just like it was mentioned earlier. The member is the driver. The rest of us, we are navigators, we are passengers, okay? It's not about us. It is not about us. It is about what they want. And again, within reason. I always tell members, you know, I'll walk with you. I'll walk with you as far as you want to go. However, if somebody wants to go over the bridge, I'm not going to go over the bridge with them. So always help remind, we have to often reel people back and remind them of the limitations, and not because you think it's a bad idea, but because federal government restricts us. Even we have to go by the fair market rent. We cannot, even if we wanted to, we couldn't approve more than what the government allows us to for housing subsidies. We just can't. It's not in the cards. And you have to understand it's about affordable housing. So even if you have John, who is one of those resourceful people and has extra money on the side, and he'll say, well, I'll pay the extra amount. The government still is not going to let you do that because this is all about affordable housing, not living paycheck to paycheck or stretching your limit. It's about affordable housing, okay? Every member will work at a different pace. It's up to you to just be patient and always remember to use that motivational interviewing. That is the key. And you're going to use that throughout every single stage of tenancy, okay? Now, everybody, we know we have a general PCP, all the logistics, but also make sure you refer to your company policy when writing any PCP, all right? And if you are ACT or CST, everybody unmute, please. Do I have ACT and CST workers here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, if you have not completed the CST PSH training, it is a state requirement. We have one coming up in September. If the leadership has not told you about it yet, please let me know. You can email me. I'll give you my email in a second. Or Alex, can you put my email in the chat, please? Alex will put my email in the chat. We have a training coming up next month, and we only offer these every other month. You're required to have it within 90 days of hire. And it's a 3-day
Natalie?
training.
Natalie,
Yes.
I can't remember if I took it or not. This is Joey Gill. Do I need to just check my records?
Joey, I think you took it, but I can ask Ron Scott. He's the one who
Okay.
sends out the emails. You don't remember if you got a certificate?
I honestly don't.
Okay, that's okay. I'm writing a note right now. And
Thank
I'll
you.
ask and see if you took it, okay? Because they
Thank
keep
you.
record. Who are you with again?
Carolina Outreach.
Okay, I'll ask him and I'll shoot you an email, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any questions about the training? Or about anything that we just talked about, or any comments?
This is Nay. I have a question.
Yes, Nay.
Do the tenants or the members usually get a copy of their goal plan? Because a lot of times they'll
absolutely.
say what it is. How soon after do they get a copy of the goal plan?
They should get it once it's completely signed by everyone, because the doctors have to sign it too. I mean, everyone has to sign off on it, not on all the amendments, but they have to sign out. They should have a copy of it, the original plan. Am I right, QPs? I need my QPs.
Yes,
or
you
my-
are correct. Every
Yes.
time there's, especially the initial one, but normally you want to kind of give them the update, but at least the initial and the annual.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you. Good question, Nay. Any other questions? All right, great. Well, thank you all very much for attending. And this will, like I said, this was recorded. If you want to share it with any member, on any of your peers or anything like that, or you want to use it for review. And if I
You're muted.
If you have any questions about anything, please feel free to email me, okay? Or just give me a call if you have my number, or you can get it through Alliance. Thank you so much.
Bye, Natalie.
Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.